This week, House Democrats elected a new generation of leaders. New York's Hakeem Jeffries will be taking over for Nancy Pelosi, becoming the first African-American to lead a party in Congress. Katherine Clark of Massachusetts was elected minority whip, and Pete Aguilar of California is the new chair of the party caucus. And they'll be joined by a longtime powerful figure who decided to stay in the Democratic leadership. Joining me now is current House Majority Whip and the incoming Assistant Democratic Leader, James Clyburn. Whip Clyburn, welcome back to the Sunday Show, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me back.
So with the rest of the old guard stepping away, why did you decide to stand for election to be a part of the new leadership team?
Well, several reasons. First of all, Hakeem Jeffries, Katherine Clark, Pete Aguilar are well prepared to lead our caucus, and they will be leading. The fact of the matter is, though, we do have in the other parts of the country that have been crying out for a long time to be recognized, be respected, and be included. I represent southern states, and I think it's a mistake for people to keep thinking of the South as being white only. And that's what I keep hearing. The fact of the majority is the vast majority of Black Americans still live in the South. And I represent rural interests that we are beginning to make a breakthrough with. With our recent infrastructure bill, we made a significant breakthrough among rural voters, and I want to continue that. And I had long discussions with Hakeem Jeffries. Mm-hmm. He knows exactly what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is the biggest thing the new Democratic team will face in the minority?
Well, I think the thing is to keep our caucus together. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of disarray on the other side. And we have demonstrated in the last 2 years what you can do when you stay unified. That doesn't mean that you're going to be unanimous on everything. Just stay unified. And I think having those three steering our future, I think that we're going to be very unified.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the disunity on the other side of the aisle. Current House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is working hard to scare up the 218 votes he's going to need on January 3rd when they have the vote for the new House Speaker. Do you think he'll be successful in his quest for the Speaker's gavel?
I think so. I don't know so, but I think so. You know, he's been there a long time. He's been their leader for a long time. And I think that he has the levels that will allow him to put together the kind of deals that are necessary to get to 218. However, if there are 7 or 8 people who are not going to vote for him, then I'll advise him to go and look on the other side of the aisle and see whether or not there are some deals over there to be made as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, what kind of deals?
Well, you know, we want to push an agenda that will make this country's greatness accessible and affordable for all of its citizens. And I just talked about the South. And I just talked about the parts of the South that have been left out so much of this. And I think that if we could sit down together, we might be able to forge an agenda that would be acceptable to 218 people.
I just want to be clear here. What you're saying is if Kevin McCarthy can't get the 218 votes among his Republican caucus, which is expected to be around 222 Republicans for them to have the majority, if he can't get to 218 with just Republican votes, you're open to him coming over to the Democratic side and making a deal to get some Democratic votes. That's what I'm hearing.
Sit down with Hakeem Jeffries and talk about the future of this country. Talk about doing as many things as we possibly can in a bipartisan way. That's how you do it. You bring votes to the table. We bring votes to the table. Let's see what we can do about fashioning a bipartisan approach to making this country's greatness accessible and affordable for all of its citizens. What's wrong with that?
Ain't nothing wrong with it. I'm thunderstruck by this idea. Has anyone from the McCarthy camp made any kind of initial foray or initial conversation to just suss out whether the incoming Democratic minority would be amenable to these discussions?
Oh, I don't know. Hakeem Jeffries is going to be our leader. He would be the one for him to talk to. And I suspect he will be consulting with Nancy Pelosi, who is one of the best at this sort of thing. Remember now, we did not pass all of these bills with Democrats alone. The infrastructure bill was a bipartisan bill.
Right.
The Inflation Reduction Act was bipartisan. No, it was not. The bill on the Chips and Science bill was bipartisan.
The American Rescue Plan? Was
the
that
rescue plan was Democrats only.
Right.
The Inflation Reduction, Democrats only. But infrastructure, Chips and Science, both of them were bipartisan, as well as the PAC Act.
So it sounds like to me, Leader Jeffries, yes, go to Speaker Pelosi to consult with her to find out what should happen. But if he comes to you, he now knows what you think.
Oh, yeah, I will tell anybody. If we can do things for this country in a bipartisan way, we ought to do it.